last week when we did the recording, I was still freezing every now and again. But when I watched the playback, because I went onto YouTube and I watched the playback, and it was perfect. So.
Okay. And it's colder now.
You're streaming already? You guys are streaming already?
I'm trying to get it in here.
You started streaming but not recording.
No, I'm not going to record because it goes onto the YouTube channel, and I can take the recording from there if I want it.
Yeah.
Okay. Everyone, thank you again for being here. I'm Gunther Wallendorf, the CBO of the New Nation Education Nonprofit Organization. Allow me to give you a quick rundown of the webinar. Basically, this webinar series was really about trying to change the direction of South Africa, and the main things that we could focus on to help us change the direction of South Africa. So we started the series with scaling a small business, then we went on to employment, poverty, and tonight we're on education and skills. And all these things actually overlap. And I mean, although we've spoken about each of them in every week, people need to hear it anyway, again. So we'll do a lot of overlapping again tonight when we talk about education. But before we get there, I would like to introduce you to our panel of experts. And we have Dr. Arthur Moore Roberts with us, who's philanthropist, entrepreneur, author, founder of Celebrating Humanity International, Key Leadership International, operating internationally and globally over 24 years now. She's also an international keynote speaker, leadership coach, diversity and inclusion specialist. Her compassionate leadership of influence value is being implemented in Lebanon, Ireland, UK, USA, Bangladesh, and Pakistan. Doctorate in Leadership, Diversity and Inclusion, Oxbridge Institute for Professionals of the UK. Influential Woman of the Year 2020 South Africa. Nation Builder Award 2020 South Africa. Global
He's frozen.
My bio shocked him.
The long words in your bio shocked him. He's really frozen.
If we stay still, then it looks like we all froze.
Yeah. It must be your turn to sing, Arthie.
I actually did that, yes, 2 days ago on a
Let me check. See, send me the
session.
message. Because you might not know.
Years as the principal of Law School Excelsior in Port Elizabeth, and 12 years as the principal of Settlers Park Primary School, also in Port Elizabeth. Andreas holds a BA degree and a diploma in education with majors in botany and zoology. He has a B.Ed degree in biblical studies and continues his studies. He has an ACE diploma in management, which he completed in 2009 at NU. He followed a 2-year course in mentorship with the Northwest University during 2016. Andreas is passionate about nature conservation, and as an honorary ranger in the Kruger National Park, his love for science led to the Settler Science Expo, which he organized for more than 12 years. As an experienced expo judge at Eskom Expo for young scientists, he used his field experience in the daily activities as provincial coordinator in his province to assist learners with their projects, and he has great passion for leadership development and 21st century skills development, as well as being a director for the New Nation Education nonprofit organization. Thank you very much. I know that was long. Hopefully it wasn't too painful, right? So tonight we're going to be talking about education and skills development, particularly in South Africa, as we all live in South Africa, and this is where we're focusing on. And the things that I see in this area are actually the education system that we've all come through, and I still believe it's in place in South Africa, is actually an industrial age education system, which teaches people to be good workers and not to think for themselves. Most schools do not have basic resources, libraries, computers, classrooms, sports equipment, music equipment, and arts and culture. We have an extremely high school dropout rate, currently sitting at 56%. We are have a very low pass percentage level of around 30%. And then, of course, the system benefits no one. You know, when you start pulling back the level at which people are meant to pass a certain training or skill level, then you actually benefit nobody. So I think tonight we should actually start with Andreas. Andreas, if you can just give us some insight on what you believe the education system, or how we can adapt this education system going forward, so that obviously we don't want to reinvent the wheel. Give us your thoughts on that, please.
Gunther, you need to unmute him.
Oh, sorry. Is it unmuted yet? I can't actually tell.
Andre, maybe say something.
Andre, I mean, he was unmuted when he came to the meeting.
It's his time to
Your
freeze.
system actually froze.
Maybe.
Can
Yes,
you hear me?
Andre.
Yeah.
Yes,
sorry,
we can
but
hear you now.
you see, it's one of those things. Technology is supposed to help us, and then all of a sudden, sometimes technology creates more problems than anything else. So
Yeah.
it's always a 50-50. But I think tonight's topic is actually one of my favorites. And I think I did mention something about it before. One size fits all. You know, if we look at education today, especially government looks at education and they see education as one size fits all. And everyone must go to school. Everyone must go to a decent school. They must get some good education. But what they tend to forget is that if you look at learners, learners have different potentials. Learners have different interests. Learners have different situations. Learners have different cultures. Learners have different, and you can carry on with that. So if we look at just education and we look at the skills in this country, there's a need for that. And everyone wants to go to university, but nobody wants to work with their hands, and other skills, develop other skills, and make sure that we contribute to the economics of this country. So yes, academic is important, but you must always look at the needs of the learner itself. And that's where we start. And learners have different needs. Learners have different potential. Certain learners will never go to university, and we must accept that. But then on the other hand, there's something else that they can do. There's some skills that they can develop. They can still contribute to the economy of this country. We can talk a little bit later on the 21st century skills, because that is also something that's close to heart. And I want to emphasize something on that as well. But yes, definitely different systems for different learners and the need of what our country needs as well. I listen to the radio today again. There are so many students waiting to get posts somewhere along the country. The posts are there, but they are not appointed. So somewhere along the line, the system itself, there's something wrong. We need to sit down. We need to analyze. We need to find where's the critical needs of our country, and we need to make sure that we cater for those needs as well. You know, planning. If you don't plan 10, 20, 25 years ahead of you, somewhere along the line, you're going to fall into some sort of difficulties. And I think that's where our country is exactly at the moment, because for the last 30 years, we haven't done any planning, what our country needs and what we need as a society as well. Thanks, Gunther.
Thank you, Andre. And I would now like to ask Dr. Arthur Moore Roberts, what do you think that we could do to help the educators in this country to help the students? Because the education system is not doing it at the moment for the students.
Sure. That is a loaded question, because we've been looking at education. We talk about the education of our youth. We talk about youth are the leaders of tomorrow. And we forgot to actually realign the actual system, the education system from government level, curriculums at government level, training at government level. We've forgotten to bring in and change even the training colleges and the curriculums that the teachers have to go through and have to study in order to participate in teaching any subject. So there's generalized stuff. And one of the things that stood out for me, which would be very relevant to take note of, is in the training that we do currently with adults. The thing that is most relevant is half of them have never heard of personality types, which Jan is a behavioral analysis specialist on, and learning styles, the most simplest form of understanding how to communicate effectively. And the reason I talk about it is because accelerated learning techniques is something that I experienced 24 years ago. And that was in America, and that was at an incredible height and of understanding and engaging with, as something to be brought into the education system internationally. Our country does not even look at it. When I spoke to a couple of teachers, they said they have maybe a 1 to 2 hour session or in a lecture about learning styles. And when you think about the reality of what Andre was talking about just now, being academic is one aspect of learning, but the physical skills, the technical skills are the things that are going to be most needed right now when technology, IT, and all of those areas are not going to be compatible with a lot of the learning styles of young people in the education system, in the way that we interact with people in the real world. And here's the thing, is that in the working environment, We've got people coming in as school leavers, not given the proper skills and the development to relate to people in the way that they communicate. And if you just understood the way you take in information and you looked at kids and saw, well, visual, audio, kinesthetic, VAK learning styles, and then you understood that the kids that were more prone to the kinesthetic environment were the musicians, the artists, the kids that loved sports. They excelled in those areas, but those are not the careers that are encouraged or developed. They would only take the rising stars in specific areas. The thing that happens with teachers is they're forced to stick to a curriculum and not step out of boundaries with that. When I was in America, I was working with the Times Square Academy. And what's unusual about the school is that they were a charter school, meaning that they were part funded by government and the other half of the funding came from corporate. And at that point, it was Lotto. But what they did was they used science, technology, computers, and maths as the main basis for it. But the type of kids that were in that school, middle school, being primary school in our speaking terms, they were given the opportunity from previously disadvantaged backgrounds. That is how the school was run. Mostly previously disadvantaged kids given access to all of these technologies, iPads, and all of this. This was 24 years ago. But then they were upskilled in presentation skills. The teachers went through rigorous training to develop their ability to use the technology, their ability to understand presentation skills, their ability to be innovative thinkers. The stuff that's coming up now about being agile. These teachers were given those tools to be able to do that without being let down, saying that the kids had to excel in these subjects when the teachers were not prepared for it. And that was unfair. So this school actually invested in the teachers first, and then in community and with parents to understand what the curriculum was. So there was a buy-in from everybody. So you didn't have children going home and then the parents asking, so where's your geography and where's your history? Why haven't you done biology? When they understood, when you put your child into the school, they're getting real life experience and engagement with the corporate world right at that age. And one of the projects that they did was, I remember this was in Rhode Island, East Providence. They needed to build a bridge. And this was government, the local government and the corporate companies came together, and they came to the school and they asked the kids to actually create this model, which meant that the teachers had the ability and the free range to make decisions. They had the ability to have access to budget without question. They had access and support from parents and from community and from business owners and small business owners. Everybody came together to guide and support the kids on these projects. And what they did was they took these kids out to go and check soil samples. They took them to architectural companies where they got to engage with them and get to understand the scope of the project. They went to different places where they learned presentation skills and speaking skills, body language, and how to present. And the kids were able to shine in their talent and their gifts, not because they did a test and had to showcase how much they could regurgitate and memorize from a lesson. They went out into the world, experienced the reality of what it meant to design a bridge, what would happen in terms of geography with the lay of the land, with the soil, what would happen with materials. They went to different factories. They got to test everything under a microscope. They got to understand using math, science, technology, and the computers to generate a model. And then they created a model, a physical, small model. But it had to be to spec. And they had to source the materials. So project management skills, all of those things that you need right now, is not taught in our curriculums in our country. We expect kids and young school leavers to come out of school, go into a working environment, understand Excel, learn how to present, learn how to stand up in a crowd, be smartly dressed, brand yourself, how to execute with excellence, how to speak with conviction, how to speak with clarity. We don't have those things, and teachers don't have the ability to, because they're still regurgitating curriculums that were built way before all of these things were needed, 30, 40, 50 years ago. The curriculums have not changed that much. Now they're changing it, but in the wrong direction. And so I think one of the things that we're missing here is the upskilling of teachers first, because they're the ones that are either limiting the education and the mindsets of the young kids, or they're stimulating them in the environments where people pay a load of money to be able to give their children that out of school experience. And the majority of our country don't have access to that, and that's unfair. It should be standardized across the board, unusual, incredible, engaging, a curriculum that gets everybody hands-on. And just because you're more technically based doesn't mean that there's something wrong with you. It just means that your skills are going to be something that everybody needs in the years to come, but we've overlooked it.
Thank you very much, Dr. Arthur Roberts. Jan, I'd like to ask you what you feel that the parents should be doing for these young kids, knowing that the possibilities are with a school leaving certificate, they won't even get a job. What do you think the parents should be doing?
Well, that's another great question, of course, and also a very important one, because I think as parents, we've got a certain responsibility. Now, of course, there's been a bit of a background that there's been a lot of parents in the past, because of the history of South Africa, who never went to school in the first place, weren't allowed to even. So it was much more challenging for them to entice and force even their children to go to school. Part of the lack of understanding of the importance and the necessity, but also that they couldn't even help them because of the lack of education, which was mostly forced, of course. Now, there was one example where Artie and I were working with a school here in not too far away, and the head of the school, the lady said, all the kids came from informal areas, because it's especially the poorer side of town, if you like. That's where the biggest challenges are to make sure that the children go to school. And so she said, we had all the children came from an informal area, and on any given day, sometimes more than 50% wouldn't turn up. No phone calls, no message of, I can't be there. They just wouldn't turn up. And she made one small change, which was an important one. And she started charging the parents 100 rand per month for their children to be in school. Now they got meals in school as well, and that was significant. First of all, because the parents weren't forcing the children. There was no skin in the game. The children also saw that there was no investment of the parents either on effort and time and everything. But now things totally changed. And what really happened was all of a sudden kids were coming to school, because now, first of all, the parents were having a skin in the game. They were paying for their kids to come to school, and people might say, well, it's only 100 rand. But if you haven't got money, 100 rand is a lot. So there was, even for those that couldn't afford the 100 rand, they would come into the school and help in the grounds or making meals for the kids. But they were partaking in the kids' education in that way. So now these parents, all of a sudden, they made sure that their kids were going to school. The kids saw that the parents were investing in their education. The parents knew they were investing in their education. So they said, you better get your backside to school. Regardless whether they could really help them at home or not in that side. But it was important because all of a sudden, more than between 90 and 95% of the children went to school every single day. If they couldn't come, there would be a phone call, or there would be a message or an explanation why they couldn't come. So the accountability from that side, because now there was skin in the game, and they participated. Now, these were, of course, a lot of parents who had that background of a forced lack of education, not because they wanted to. But I think, well, generally speaking, I think parents have got a lot of input and a lot of important input in the education of the children. And as Andre said as well, you know, to plan ahead, but even for parents to look ahead 10, 20, 30 years, where are their children going to be, you know, if they don't have an education? And a lot of parents on the poorer variety, on the poorer side of society, see that because that's where they are at the moment. And I mean, every parent really ideally wants the best for their children, and they want them to be better than they are. They want them to, you know, preferably earn more money so they can look after them when they get older as well. But there should be parents have got a responsibility, at least accountability, to make sure that they encourage learning by the children. We're also part of Artie and I are also part of the Self-Learning Revolution Academy. So self-learning should also be encouraged. That doesn't necessarily mean that the parents need to sit with them and explain everything when they get at home all the time. That might not be possible, but to encourage them with stories of what the future may look like if they actually go to school, and if they don't go to school, to explain in clear terms that, you know, yes, the certificate might not be worth the paper it's written on by the time they get to the other end, and things might have changed so much. But education in general is necessary because of so many things: the stimulation of the brain, the social adhesiveness, because we're all really pack animals, and I say that in the nicest possible time. But kids need to go and socialize with other young children. They need to go and be educated by somebody else. And I know a lot of people do homeschooling now because of a lack of the value they see in the education system. But again, that's where parents are actually contributing to the education of their children. But it is very important overall that they've got an important role to play. So they should not talk down on education. They should try to encourage it, and you know, hopefully ensuring that the kids actually go to school, also interact with the teachers, and show an interest, regardless of the background, show an interest in what their kids are doing. You know, the parent-teachers evenings, all those kind of things where parents can get involved in the social events around the school as well. You know, to at least show their kids that they are really interested, whether it's, you know, standing on the sidelines cheering them on during the sports day and all those kind of things. So there's a lot of things that parents can do, but they must. They must not. It is a nice to have. They must encourage. They must empower them. They must even ensure that the kids know the importance of a formal education. And it's not the excuse, oh, but you know, things are changing so fast, we don't know what we're going to do. No, it's also the development of children, especially at a young age, is so important, and that needs to come from all angles. The brain needs to get stimulated. The social togetherness needs to be there. The sports needs to be there in the school for their health and well-being, because that's also something that is often lacking. And then any other interest that might be created or awoken, if that's a word, awakened in them, because we, you know, the danger is so often that we don't think for ourselves anymore, and our creativity isn't there, and then we go into the work environment, and our bosses and some of them even called leaders, they get really upset because nobody does anything by themselves, because they only wait for them to be told to do something. So I mean, somewhere along the line, we create those monsters, but in the nicest possible way. But we create that system because we need to make sure that there is a lot of creativity. And Andre, being heavily involved in ESCOM science and so many other things over the year, sciences are creative subjects in school that not only tend on a memory, but also have to include people to think for themselves and, you know, to find different solutions and all that. So there is a lot that parents can do to guide them into the right way. And I know there's plenty of parents who want their children to be lawyers, doctors, and brain surgeons and all those kind of things. But the child should be able to be what they want to be, but they need that basic education to at least have a better start in life.
Thank you very much, Jan. The New Nation Education non-profit organization really was developed and started because of the problems at school in South Africa, and to help create a sustainable funding for education of school children in South Africa, while we help the parents and poorer community members, the adults in those communities, with business training, skills development, entrepreneurship, so that they can become self-employed entrepreneurs or business owners, and that way becoming totally independent of any grant system that the government may be helping them with or controlling them with. Andreas, I'd like to ask you how you feel, or what you feel sports, music, arts and culture and stuff like that plays in the role of education of young people. And if you've seen anything, the effects of not having it in a school, because so many of our schools don't have those things.
No, absolutely, especially if you look at the rural schools, and I've been involved with some of the most rural schools in our province as well. And, you know, sometimes you'll be surprised to see what they actually accomplish, especially with their science projects. When I was still involved with Eskom Expo for Young Scientists, they would come up with the most brilliant ideas, but there was someone behind them, a leadership figure that could guide them. So, and those people are there. They haven't got all the resources, but the ideas are there, and they just need a little bit something extra and some more resources to develop those ideas into practical working ideas, and where they can actually achieve something and making money from that as well. You know, we look at the learners and we say it's different backgrounds. We understand that, but you know, where there's a will, there's a way. If you've got somebody that really wants to change, and it has to start within themselves, and there's enough of our learners that's got that. But we also need to focus on what we are looking at for the learners in our 21st century as well. What are the skills? What are the extra things that we are looking for in those learners as well? And then there's those things that comes to mind: the critical thinkers, the problem solvers. Those are the people that we really would like to see come forward. Creativity, innovation, those sort of things. These are the kind of things that we are actually working on. And if we focus a little bit on those things, we can see the changes that comes about. And there are so many things that they can do for themselves and their community as well. But it has to start with an idea, and they have to take it forward as well. But you know, not only that, we were talking about collaboration a little bit earlier, but collaboration, working with the right people, leadership development, those are the things that we must focus on. We need leadership, but you know, we look at leadership and we say, where are the leaders in our country? But what we actually need is visionary leadership, visionary leaders that knows what we want, what is lacking in our country at the moment, where we are going, and the vision of the whole community, taking them with them. You know, I remember when I was still a principal at school, sometimes I will come up with those most brilliant idea in my mind. I've just got it. But you know what? I was the only one with that idea and no one to follow. And that's a huge mistake. If you've got the idea, you need to know how to get the people involved to follow you as well. So there's a critical focus area again. It's one thing to have an idea, but if you are on your own, it will still remain only an idea and no one will follow it through. But the moment that you got the people behind you and you can work together, move ahead, move forward, man, I can tell you, you can change anything. To create ethical citizenship among our learners, you know, ethics, work ethics. If you just look at those small things, it looks like something very small at the moment. But if you can focus on those things, you can change the whole community. Only working ethics. Not at the end of the day to collect the paycheck, but to add value. I will still keep on coming back to those points, because those are the things that can change a community, that can change people's lives around, that can make a difference in each and every learner's life or parent's life as such as well. And Jan was touching on it as well. You know, we sit with those differences. The parents at the moment are lacking so much behind because they haven't had what their children are having today. And that discrepancy between the learners of today and the parents of today, we need to try and focus on that gap as well, how we can do that. I remember at my school, I've started working sessions and skills development in the afternoons. When school closed, I was working with my parents to develop certain skills so that they, as a parent themselves, can know how to teach their learners, their children, how they can maybe make their own living a better living, improve their education as such as well. So there's many ways that we can do it. But all these efforts, it's useless if we don't put them to practice and see how they can come practically involved in their communities itself as well.
Thanks, Andre. Dr. Arthur Moore Roberts, would you like to give us 3 minutes before you leave?
Yeah, I think one of the
I would like
think
you
some
to,
of, and quite a number of skills. I like that, what Andre said. Thank you.
yeah, I was just wondering if you could give some advice to young people that would be wanting to start their own businesses or be self-employed. What skills do you think are that young person to know and learn?
I think the biggest skill is curiosity, because being curious about a business before you start one allows you to understand the reality of what it is. Because it's exciting to say, I want to sell stuff and I want to make money. But if you're not curious about how to run the business, how you need to connect and communicate with people, where do you go to network? What is this networking thing that people talk about? When people say self-growth and motivation is a big thing, what do they mean by it? So I think one of the biggest things is having one of those questioning type of engagements with themselves is a big key. Because before, a lot of people are advertising how you can become an entrepreneur, but they talk about place, product, price, and all of the 4 P's of marketing. But they don't tell you that the reality is that you need to understand how to use a computer, how to send emails, what is the correct way to engage with people in email marketing, when do you pick up the phone, how do you write a message in coherent English or whatever language it is in terms of business that doesn't come across as I'm selling to you and I want something from you. There needs to be a removal of entitlement. That as an entrepreneur, it does not mean that you're entitled to funding and to sponsorship as a given. Being an entrepreneur means that you've got to step up and understand every aspect of business. I started being an entrepreneur at age 19. But the year that I spent in college, I learned business law, marketing, business management. I learned financial literacy, and all of the things that I never learned in school. So it was an eye opener for me. Then I learned a lot more about attending networks and conferences, and it was an eye opener because I didn't know what to do. So when they talk about branding and self-confidence, there's a massive difference in knowing how to step up and stand out in the crowd. When somebody says your unique selling proposition as an entrepreneur, you're not going to know that overnight. You need to actually build your skills and ability and and surround yourself with mentors from different areas and expertise that you can learn from, and then learn what mentorship is and learn how to ask better questions from every person you come in contact with, and then remove the racist colored glasses that people wear, because your education in entrepreneurship comes from every cultural background. So you cannot discount somebody based on the color of their skin and demean them to nothingness based on the histories of our country. You look at them and ask them, what did you do? How did you grow? What did you have to overcome in obstacles? And what is the meaning of failure? And how do I embrace it to have a success mindset? So there are so many aspects to being an entrepreneur, from your mindset, your growth mentality. Jan talks about fixed and growth mindset. You're talking about mind power. You're talking about positive thinking. You're talking about engaging with TED Talks, getting onto platforms where you start to understand that you're not limited as an entrepreneur to your own backyard, that global impact is right now a given. Everybody and anybody can have access to it as long as you know and understand where to look and how to look, and having good mentors around you gives you that ability to. And the last thing I would say is that as young people, their take on entrepreneurship is unique right now, because they're fast tracking their ability to engage on a very different level and come up with very different, unique ideas. So the last thing is, don't give up on your idea. Just because somebody doesn't understand it doesn't mean it won't work. You just haven't found the right people to understand your reality. So you never ever give up on that just because you're surrounded by people who gave up on themselves. You move on until you find people that believe in you, but you can only do that if you believe in yourself.
Thank you very much, Dr. Arthur Roberts. Jan, I'd like to ask you to explain to young people how the values-based leadership program could help them if they were in business for themselves.
Oh yeah, always a good question when we talk about values, and both Andre and Arthur have already talked into the value of values, ethics, characters, principles. I mean, it is very important. We see it in leadership, or we don't see it in leadership actually at the moment. It's failing. A lot of businesses and leadership of a business as well, but a lot of businesses and leadership are failing because of a lack of values. And we, it's a global phenomena. It's not only in this country, because people, when they talk about Africa, it's, they talk about corruption, but if we haven't opened our eyes in the last 3 years. So I think it is very important for young people to have a foundation, at least a foundational understanding first and foremost, what values are intrinsic to them, what are values that are important to them that they would not compromise on. And there should be a certain list of those values that everybody's got: honesty, transparency, respect, listening. But when we talk about some of these, integrity is actually a wonderful example, because when we talk about integrity, that in business, that means something very different than in the communities. In the communities, you have integrity that if somebody's ill in your house, it doesn't matter what happens at work, you stay in home because your purpose is to look after the person in the home, regardless of how important the meeting at work was. Now, on the meeting side, if you don't turn up at work for an important meeting, you've got no integrity. So everybody thinks they have integrity, but the misunderstanding, so everybody gets angry with each other. Now, when we start to understand values at the same level, that means that it's a simple switch that the person in business just explains what happens in business. So we understand that it is important for you, especially in the communities, to be at home if these things happen. All we would ask for you, if this happens, call in. Let us know that you can't make it. We understand it. Although it's important, but this is so important for you. But let us know that we don't have a meeting now where you just don't turn up and you know, whatever happens afterwards. But in business, values, I would say it's in life, in business, in your social environment, in every area. Values are simply the foundation of all of it. And unless we can take a step back and go back to these values where we can inspire and instill those values, not only in our youngsters, because adults need them as well. I think in persons at every age, every background, it doesn't matter who you are and where you are, we can always improve on the not only the knowledge we've got about basic human values, because we don't talk about fancy things on the walls that people have walked into corporations. There's a beautiful values hanging on the wall. No, we're talking about basic human values. I've already mentioned a few, and it's a development people, it's forgiveness, it's restraint, it's so many more of these basic things that yes, we've heard about them, but the power of having them, we've already talked about the power of being in the process of developing ourselves in values-based leadership, but the power of having a value system that you can fall back on and that you can depend on because they are yours. And that doesn't mean that between the three of us here, between Andre, yourself and myself, that we have all the same values that are intrinsic to us, because we've got all things that are more important to us than to other people. And one size doesn't fit all, as Andre said, with the education system too. But values is the same, but that we at least have an understanding. So whether you come out with something that is valuable to you, that we at least know what it is and why it's important to you. And I think all values should be important to all of us. But of course, some of them stand out more. That some of the things that, you know, family, for example, in business, somebody wants you to, or religion. Let's take a simple one. There is some areas where they, and it used to be everywhere, that they don't want to work on a Sunday. There's still a Chick-fil-A, for example, in America. They refuse. They're not open on a Sunday. But that's one of their main values as a Christian background. And I'm not pointing religion out here, but so. If that is important to you, that on Sunday, for example, you've got family time and that's more valuable than work, and they tell you need to come into work, you either stand by your values or you don't. And the thing is, you can say, okay, I'll make an exception this time. Oh, what other value are you going to make an exception on? Do you have integrity? Can I trust you as a business pastor? Because you said the youngsters need to know as well that it is a simple saying that people will do business with those they know, like, and trust. And trust is something that builds up over time, but you can lose it like that. It only has to happen once. I won't tell you a joke about this, but I mean, it is something so important, and we never pay attention to it. It's a bit like self-care, which is a value all by itself, that we're so busy to be in everything to everybody, especially when we start business. When young people want to start a business, they think, okay, I'm gonna sell something, I'm gonna make money. Artie mentioned that as well. But there are so many more things to it. So we're gonna be everything to everybody, and we forget to look after our health. Now, it doesn't matter what you want to do, healthcare, and that's why sports and sciences, because of the development of the brain and the activity of the brain as well. All those kind of things are so important in early life as well, that we can take forward into our adult life, and to make sure that when we have all of this, we can really anchor ourselves into those values, knowing fine whatever happens. It is not guaranteed that when we do the right things, everything will go fine for us, because bad things sometimes happen without our control. I mean, the last 3 years, there are so many businesses that have gone bust, and so many people have gone broke. And I think the figure was more than 150 million people around the world have been driven into extreme poverty on top of what was already there, but beyond their control. So there is always things that will happen beyond control, but at least we cannot control what happens around us. It's an African saying as well, of course. What happens around you and what happens to you is not as important what happens within you. Your values are from inside. So if you've got that solid foundation, you can always step forward in the confidence that you're doing the right thing at the right time, regardless when people are watching.
Thank you very much, Jan Roberts. Thank you very much, Andre, for being here this evening. Appreciate you guys very much. You can always connect with the New Nation Education nonprofit organization or the Key Leadership Institute online. You can just do a Google search. We're all there. If you want to change your life, the life of your school, the school itself, the community, if you want to start uplifting people, please connect with us. That's what we're here for. Thank you all. Good. I'm just going to switch off the streaming. And then we will call it quits.
Okay.